morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Gemma Mendoza, Head for Research and Strategy here at Rappler, and we are here on Rappler Talk. We are going to take up a very important topic this morning, future-proofing young Filipinos through innovation and social enterprise. A recent study by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies says half of the jobs in the Southeast Asian countries will be at high risk of being affected by automation. Similarly, the Institute of the Future for the Future also predicts that 85% of jobs are not even that will exist in 2030 haven't even been invented yet. What does this mean for young people or parents of those young people who will be looking for jobs in the future? And what does this mean for the broad objective of the Sustainable Development Goals to leave no one behind? To answer these questions, we have with us Andrew Parker, Economic Advisor of the United Nations Development Program in the Philippines, and Dr. Jose Ramon Albert, a Senior Research Fellow at the PIDS. So I'll start with Dr. Albert because we're taking off from your study. Half of jobs in Southeast Asian countries will be at risk. What does that mean?
Well, even if you think of jobs being at risk, it doesn't mean necessarily that all jobs will get lost. Mm-hmm. We're just saying that in reference to actually that a broader set of studies, that technology is going to change the job market. Mm-hmm. It's possible that some jobs will get displaced or replaced by technology, but it's also possible, especially for those jobs that are fairly repetitive and that can be codifiable. They can be replaced. Automation will actually make it certain tasks easier to be replaced by machines. But there also be new sets of jobs that will be created by technology, and there will be some jobs that will be complemented by technology. So how exactly this is going to play, nobody fully knows. But there are some suggestions that, at least for instance, the Asian Development Bank, they made an outlook based on data from 2005 to 2015, suggesting that some jobs have been displaced, but there have been much more jobs that have been created. So what this really means for young people is that some of the kinds of jobs that we're thinking of have not been invented yet. And so it's going to be important for us to have skills that will make them very flexible for having new jobs, and perhaps even because of the gig economy, you probably be having as many as 6 to 10 not only jobs, but occupations in the future.
So rather than just one job, you might actually have like a set of sources of income and occupations.
Yes, and you could be shifting from one kind of occupation to another, because perhaps the occupation that you have now might not be as relevant 5 years from now. So it will be important for you. For instance, even now, just as specific as driverless cars. They're already being tested in Singapore and many other countries. And at some point, they'll probably get into the Philippines. So can you imagine if there are people whose skill is only to drive a car? So you will need to get new kinds of skills to be able to get new kinds of jobs that will be available in the future. Or perhaps it might be possible that there might be some of the jobs currently available that will, when you say at risk, it doesn't necessarily mean automatically all the jobs will get replaced, because the absorption of technology also depends on society and depends on the industry. So some kinds of, to be more specific, for instance, bank tellers. In the 1990s, people thought that because of automated teller machines, all the bank teller jobs will get displaced. But actually what happened was there were more jobs for bank tellers because bank tellers were given extra kinds of opportunities, such as customer relationship management.
So I'll go to Andrew here, because this has some implications into the United Nations, like a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, launched the Sustainable Development Goals, and the goal of that, the broad objective of that, was to leave no one behind. This clearly has an implication with respect to that goal. Can you talk about that?
I can, yes. Thanks, Gemma. So I think this really goes to the point about risk and opportunity, right? So the risks are clearly there, but the opportunities are also there. And I think, you know, technology is a bit like markets. They're a little bit. It's going to be a lot of what we make of it, how we shape the use of technology. One thing we can be sure about is that digital skills will be a core skill that everybody in the population
like
needs to have to take advantage of those opportunities.
It cannot be just of the programmers.
Correct. That it really needs to diffuse across the whole of society. And that means that if we look at the current situation, we have quite a large digital divide, where there are large parts of the country, here in the Philippines and in other countries in the region, where people don't yet have access to the internet.
Like 60 million, only about 60 million or so.
And even if they have access to the internet, it's not very reliable, it's not very affordable. So that puts all of those people at a serious disadvantage in terms of being able to being able to maximize the opportunities from technology. So how do we accelerate the rollout of access to the internet? Government here, Department of Information and Communications Technology has, under the new law that was passed last year, a mandate to provide public Wi-Fi in public spaces throughout the country. So there's now a push particularly to improve internet access in schools, for example. If we don't have that, clearly young people are not going to have those opportunities to be able to, and the skills. But of course the access is not enough. You need to have the technology available, and people need to know how to use the technology, and then the sort of the applications, the software side, needs to be there to actually help people use that in a meaningful way in their society.
That points to education, right?
Yes,
but,
pretty much.
But we've been talking about this for years.
Yes.
The educational system has not evolved to that point yet. What does this mean for parents and young people?
Well, parents, teachers, even teachers, we have to think about the entire landscape for, and we don't even necessarily have to think only of the educational system, because it's the current the private sector, the industries themselves have to keep retraining people. And pretty much, for instance, let me zone in on the BPO industry, where we have a lot of possible jobs that are very highly at risk. So, but the thing is, what BPOs are doing are recognizing that there's a changing landscape. So it's harnessing these technologies now to make sure that you start offering other kinds of services. And so, going back to your point about education, so it's going to be important that the young have the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn.
So it's not about like learning the skills within the classroom, but actually like learning to adapt quickly.
Adapt quickly, as well as being able to have proper relationships with ourselves and as well as with machines.
Let's focus on, let's look at that, and specifically let's zone in on the BPO industry, because there was this very fascinating demo last time by Sundar Pichar of this technology that actually calls and makes appointments for you. So what does that mean? And when you're saying that the BPO industry needs to evolve, to what extent, and would that involve jobs being lost through automation? And how do people remain relevant in that?
Well, yeah, clearly, for instance, some of the jobs at BPOs, like customer support clerks, which are fairly routinary, those will probably be very highly at risk of being automated, because if it's very easily programmable, then you
like calling an appointment.
Yeah, and whatever might be considered cognitive that cannot be programmable now, in the future you never know, because technology is changing so dramatically.
It's like we were just talking about this morning, like how many years ago SMS was like a new technology, and now the only text messages I get are from the NDRRMC.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, it's ironic that technology is just changing so fast, and so unless the industries themselves, unless people recognize that there's a very fast changing landscape, including government, then it may put us at further risk, and the current inequalities that divide us may even get wider. So there is this as Andrew was saying earlier, there are a lot of opportunities for economic prosperity. But that also means that the people who will harness these technologies may be at better advantage than those who cannot easily adapt. So it may be possible that we will have much wider inequalities that have to be addressed by changing social protection policy and even labor policy. For a long time, many of our governments, even now, we have tried to focus on having job security. For instance, now we keep saying, let's have no Indo, but then again, we have to recognize that the landscape is changing so fast that it's not really a question of having endos, but making sure that people have the proper incomes.
So income security, rather than job security.
Exactly.
And how do you assure that in a changing milieu where
Well, that's why what we need to do, I think, is really make sure that we should be testing. For instance, in some countries, they're starting to work on what's known as the universal basic income. Of course, that might be a little bit expensive, but the conversations about whether or not this is something that is worth exploring should start.
we were talking about skills, and there was quite a lot of emphasis some years back on STEM skills and building STEM skills. But are we just talking here about STEM skills, science, tech, mathematics, or are we also looking here about at soft skills? Because you're talking about the need to be adaptable. I mean,
Yes.
agile
That's right.
in a situation like this.
There's a lot of talk now about so-called 21st century skills. So this is really taking us beyond the sort of the traditional cognitive skills. Not that they're any less important, but that they're not sufficient anymore. That we also need people who can problem solve, who can think creatively, who can work in teams, who can engage interactively with other people, other humans, and also
machines.
and machines, and feel confident in being able to do that. And I think the issue about that is that those are not skills that you can teach in the classroom. They're skills that you learn through experience.
So parents need to know this.
Correct,
no?
correct.
Parents.
And I think that goes back to your
And
point.
communities.
Indeed. That goes back to your point that we're moving out of a world where you had a job for life. Maybe parents had that. They worked for a company for 30 or more years. Those kinds of jobs are declining rapidly now. And I think that's a difficult world for parents to move into. So their world of experience is not the same world of experience that their children are having. They may not be up to date on all the latest technologies, but that doesn't mean to say that they can't support their children in adopting a more entrepreneurial approach to going out and getting that life experience that helps them to apply those kinds of skills that are needed in the job market today.
There was a slide in the video that PIDS launched, where it was looking at the top skills for 2016 in LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You're talking about cloud and distributed computing, statistical analysis, etc.
Even in the University of the Philippines, as far as I remember, there are now much more people trying to. Before it was kind of difficult for students to get into the programs. Now there are too many applicants, because certainly the issue of data analysis is getting to be much more important these days. But Andrew was right, and you're right that. It's not just a question of the technical skills, but the soft skills as well, because the landscape will change so much that it will be requiring people to have things like complex problem-solving skills.
Because when you're talking about automation, computing can be automated.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's not just about I mean, data science is a
Right.
cool job right now,
Right.
but does that mean it will be, it won't be
We never know.
disrupted?
Even data science itself is a hot thing now, but 5 years from now, some aspects of data science may be easily automated. So, so things
So
are
it's
going
really
to
about
change so much.
evolving fast and
Right.
being able to be comfortable
Right.
with that kind of a scenario.
Right, right.
We look at there were the risks, but there are also opportunities, right? So like for instance, Filipinos tend to go for certain service professions, and those are not exactly the ones that are at risk. But what is needed to be relevant in those professions?
Well, that's why I think as far as any set of occupations that you're currently in, even let me go back to what Andrew was saying about parents, because parents have had their own experiences in the job market. But they also being critical in decision making for the young. It seems that our young tend to choose careers based on what their parents say. So it will be very important for parents to recognize that there's a very vastly changing reality that they need to keep abreast of. And I'm hoping that this is where the media also plays an extremely important role, that you need to keep on informing parents and even teachers. Critical, because in the classroom, of course, I absolutely agree with Andrew that you won't learn all these skills necessarily in the classroom, but the classroom is the second home of the young. So it will be important for teachers themselves to emulate this whole idea of being able to learn, unlearn, and relearn fast.
I'll talk about. Let's focus on like some of the most popular jobs here, like nursing, doctor, medicine.
But notice, no
And
lawyers.
Kailangan
Because some aspects of being a lawyer can actually be codifiable. So in fact, lawyers are
So
probably one
lawyers
of
need to rethink.
no lawyers actually are probably one of the jobs that are at risk.
What about seamen? I mean, there are quite a lot of Filipino seamen.
So I think the point is that you have to deconstruct these jobs and realize that some elements of the job can be automated. Other elements of the job you will need to upskill. You'll need to improve your abilities around the application of digital technology. So being a nurse in the years ahead means that you will need to be aware and be able to support the more complex medical procedures that come with the application of breakthrough technologies. It won't be enough to just fall back on the traditional type of nursing, and that applies to many different occupations. That you'll see digital technologies really beginning to come into all aspects of work.
Yeah, and it's not just even digital, because right now what differentiates the digital revolution that we had was now it's getting merged with the biological and the physical. You know, so sometimes when you think of certain aspects that, like for instance, biofertilizers, you know, these are things that are being used. Bioprinting, for instance.
You mentioned earlier that there's a hotel now.
In fact, the very first 3D printed hotel is in the Philippines. It's in Pampanga. And many people don't even realize that we are making use of all of these new technologies, emerging technologies of the fourth industrial revolution.
That affects jobs as well.
Yes,
Construction.
absolutely.
Okay. So we're talking about strategies to upskill, strategies so that students, or I mean, young people and the parents are conscious of the emerging technologies or the skills that they need to develop. But what about those who are left behind, what about what's the role of entrepreneurship here? Because UNDP has been promoting this for quite a while. Why is that necessary to begin with?
So I think one of the interesting things is that you're starting to see entrepreneurship as a feature in educational programs. So while you can't exactly teach somebody how to be an entrepreneur. You can help people develop the skills that you need to be an effective entrepreneur. And so even for that, there are ways of codifying how you do your learning. So you don't necessarily need to physically go to an educational institution anymore to learn of these things. If you have access to the internet, you can learn an incredible amount through taking courses on Coursera, Udemy, and other service providers. And I think one of the things about young people is that they're not waiting. Right, they want to get out there and get access to this information, and I think one of the things at UNDP that we try to focus on is understanding the barriers that young people face to actually taking advantage of opportunities that are out there. So, of course, as a young person, I'm interested in acquiring skills for myself, because that helps me to achieve the income that I'm targeting. But I also want to be an active member of my community. I want to be involved in that community, my local community, but also my regional community. So young people are very well connected. They're very enthusiastic. They have an incredible amount of energy, but they're also in some quarters seen as a risk. If you go to a bank as a young person, you're not likely to have you won't have the collateral to be able to mobilize the capital that you need. You won't have the credit history. So how do we overcome some of these kinds of barriers? I think one thing that I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about is the notion of partnership. And we talk typically about private and public partnership with civil society, but there's also intergenerational partnership, and we call that mentoring.
Right.
So if we're thinking about the relationship between parents and their children, one of the ways in which you can bring the experience of many years of wisdom, of being in the world for a long time, helping children how to harness that enthusiasm, and to manage some sense of impatience sometimes when things don't go the way that you want them to go, that you have to be resilient today, that you have to be agile, that you have to be able to respond as those opportunities come up. And I think how we connect across the digital divide, that role of bridging leadership between those who have that access and who are lucky enough to have that access, and helping to close that divide by working across as young bridging leaders is a very important role for young people to play.
Because we are saying that the job market is in a state of flux, are we seeing that entrepreneurship is also a way to bridge that?
It can be
because we're not
partly,
really an entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that as a society, I fully agree with Andrew that entrepreneurship might be a modality, but it's not the only one, because you're absolutely right. Some of us are not. We tend to be very high risk averse. So if you're an entrepreneur, then you need to be a little bit more, conscious of all the risks and
willing.
And willing to actually make adjustments to all the risks that you can actually face. So it's going to be important that the parents sort of really give proper guidance, because sometimes I think this is where the conversation between parents, intergenerational, there are these barriers that the parents have had to go through a lot of experiences dealing with people, and they don't sort of mentor their kids about what are the problem areas that they've encountered in the workplace.
And how do you overcome?
How did they cope? What are their coping mechanisms? So some of these soft skills are actually going to be extremely crucial, because not all jobs will be replaced by computers. Some will, and there will be new jobs. So the question is, how do you harness technology and all the entire enabling environment so that you can use it for your own to improve your opportunities?
So improving opportunities can be in the form of changing or being more adaptable, but also about creating opportunities
Right.
for yourself. I guess that's what entrepreneurship is about, creating opportunities for yourself and for your family. We've talked about that kind of environment. What are the things that are needed in that? What do you think do we need to, the policies that we need to put in place?
Well, clearly, government has to do its share of making sure that the entrepreneurial spirit is going to be harnessed a lot more, because unfortunately, I think there are a lot of barriers and bottlenecks being that in the wake of many regulations. We have too many regulations. I mean, that's why I was joking earlier about lawyers, is because partly, I mean, the legal environment seems to have put all of these difficulties for people to actually work around all of these risks. So we need to make sure that we have a better innovation ecosystem, and the government has to play its role, harnessing innovation by supporting R&D much more and ensuring that people get proper guidance on the kinds of jobs that may be available in the future.
Related to that, so Rappler's been working with the UNDP for quite a while now on some of these programs about to promote entrepreneurship. And UNDP has been focusing a lot on youth entrepreneurship. Can you explain further why what's the importance of that and the significance of that?
Yeah. So I think this really goes back to trying to encourage people to see those opportunities that we were talking about. So where there are gaps, there are spaces for opportunities for people to move into those. And I think encouraging people, we live in an inherently more risky environment. So those of us who are perhaps a little less risk averse had that luxury of being able to survive and exist in a less risk averse environment. Now we live in a more risky environment, and that's just a global phenomenon, and you can think of that in many different ways. So that means that we all need to realize that we need to take a more kind of risk-conscious approach to what we do. So we have to be willing to put ourselves out there. We have to be willing to stand up and be a leader. Just because you're young,
So
it
you
doesn't
don't
mean
wait
to say
for
you
somebody to
don't
create
wait
opportunities for you.
for permission to do that. You can take that initiative yourself. It doesn't mean to say that we're not all extroverts. So you may not want to be always in front of a camera or on the front stage. But there are many things that you can do to support efforts in your own community and to take your own careers and capabilities forward.
So you help yourself by being relevant.
You have to help yourself by being relevant for yourself.
You're also helping others.
But you're also helping others, and I think that's really the kind of the sweet spot for entrepreneurship, and why at UNDP we focus a lot on the development of social enterprises, because that's a model that fuses purpose and profit. So it recognizes that sustainable businesses, inclusive businesses, ones that pay attention to the environment, ones that think about the profile of the people that you're employing, these are businesses that have greatest social impact. You need to generate profit to be able to have a sustainable business. Without profit, your business will not be sustained. So many good ideas need to translate into those kinds of businesses. So if you go back through the ecosystem that Toots was talking about, it begins with being able to present your idea, or what is your idea in the first place. What is it that you would like to change? What is it that you would like to bring to your community?
So you create opportunities like these where the
that are
young
relevant
people
for you,
are,
that resonate for you, because we all have different interests. Where right? Some are motivated by the desire to produce things. Some wish to connect farmers to markets. Some people want to create new products for people. There are many different ways in which we're moved to do something. So follow your hugot.
And in so doing, you're actually like achieving both the objective of being relevant and also helping achieve the broader goal.
Correct. Correct.
I'll flash this on the screen because we're actually promoting this. We're encouraging people to join this program called Hack Society, which is where we're Toots has actually been part of the mentorship there, where we've been encouraging young kids to do that,
Yes.
to one, come up with ideas, sustainable solutions to problems, and then at the same time also creating jobs for themselves, hopefully. But we're issuing a call out for that in the coming. There's an ongoing call out for that, and we hope they'll join. But going on, are there any last words that you have for our?
So I just wanted to add that one of the programs that there is a lot of social enterprise. There are a lot of social enterprises that are coming up in the Philippines. One of the things that we realized through our analysis at UNDP is moving to scale is a major challenge, and small social enterprises are not able to access the kinds of capital and skills and mentoring support that they need. So some are not so good at the legal requirements or the financial management plans. We have a program with the Philippine Development Foundation, supported by the Australian government, the Innovation for Social Impact project, which is aiming to bring a group of social enterprises forward by filling that gap in the life cycle development of social enterprises. And I think that's the next phase. How do you take social enterprises up to the next level that they're really starting to have impact at scale?
Toots,
Well, I just like to tell our youth that change is inevitable. And so the question is, who are you now? You have to know yourself, know your interests, recognize that you're not alone. You have a lot of people who can actually help you, from your parents, your teachers, and I mean your own other members of the youth themselves who have certain ideas. So it's a matter of just trying to find all of these opportunities. Recognize that there are a lot of risks out there, but seize the moment.
Seize the moment.
Yeah.
And on that note, thank you very much, Andrew and Dr. Albert. There you have it, folks. I hope young people out there and their parents are listening to this conversation. The jobs market is evolving very fast. If you want to stay relevant, you either prepare for the jobs of the future, evolve fast, be agile, and update the necessary skills, or you need to be part of the jobs generation, which means creating your own enterprise. And we hope you'll participate in this year's Hack Society. We'll be flashing the rules and the links to the rules on the screen. Please join us. Please submit your ideas, and let's help solve this problem. This is Gemma Mendoza, and this has been Rappler Talk.